Okay, we're back in Photoshop and we're going to talk briefly about getting pictures into Photoshop and then also getting pictures out of Photoshop, also known as importing and exporting digital documents with Adobe Photoshop. Okay, so we are back with the plain open version of Photoshop with nothing currently open. We already know that if I were to hit the Create New button, that would be creating a document from scratch, but this time we're going to do something different. We're going to open up a document that already exists. We can do that by either hitting the Open button over here on the side or by hitting File and then Open up at the top, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click on File Open. I already have a folder full of example images. I'm going to click on one and then click Open. Now, I'm once again on a Mac, but if you're working with Windows, you should see something similar, but it will look slightly different, but it will function in mostly the same way. Here's a photo of Rowan, my currently 2-month-old, but back here he is probably around a week old. Yes, he is cute. Anyway, we'll close this out. So here is the Photoshop application frame again, which we know we have our toolbars over here on the left, our canvas in the middle, our options bar right over here, and then up at the top we have our menu bar. And over in the bottom right hand corner are our layers, and right above that are our adjustment layers, which we might have not talked about yet. All right, so our canvas has our picture. We currently only have one layer, which is our locked background layer with this picture of Rowan here in it. If we poke at the eyeball, which we can't do because it's locked, click on the lock, unlock it, click on the eyeball, and we see that that layer goes away. All right, so let's do two things. I'm going to look over here at my adjustment layers. We haven't really talked about layers too much yet, only the fact that they have a panel dedicated to them, which is down here in the bottom right-hand corner. But adjustment layers are ways that you can quickly and easily adjust the way an image looks in a non-destructive way. Non-destructive meaning that it doesn't change the actual pixels. I'm saying pixels as I'm zooming in to the individual pixels that make up the image itself. We're going to zoom back out. Sorry if that clicking is loud. Zoomed out a little bit too much. There we go. And I'm going to hover over these adjustment layer types until I find one that I like. Let's go with just a plain old black and white adjustment layer. And you'll notice that when I clicked on that, it added in a layer and it opened up this dialog box. Please don't fret because of my low battery life. All right, here is the brightness values for each of these individual colors here. You can see that they get brighter or darker depending on how I adjust this. But we're going to go ahead and close that. All right, so here we have this document. We've changed it one way. Let's do another thing. I'm going to go over here to my toolbar, click on this one. If I'm not sure which tool this is, I can click and hold or hover over it and see that it is the horizontal type tool. It will add text to my image. I'm just going to click right over here towards the top, and we will write out Rowan's name. Now, when I clicked on the type tool, my options bar pulled up over here. We've got the font, we've got the size of the font, we've got the color of the font, all sorts of different stuff. Now, we will cover type in depth later on this semester, but I like to kind of go over some things in brief so you can have a basic understanding of how to use stuff in Photoshop. I'm going to type out Rowan's name in all caps, R-O-W-A-N, highlight the text, Control A, and we're going to change the size of it. We'll go to 72. I think that's big enough. Anytime you make an adjustment like that, you get this up here in your options bar. This is the commit and not commit buttons. If you like the changes that you've made, go ahead and click the check mark to commit those changes. If you didn't like them, you could hit the do not commit button. And go to my move tool here, click and drag on the text, and we can drag it to wherever we would like for that text to go. I'm going to drag it right here in the middle. Okay, so we've made two adjustments to that. I'm actually not going to drag that there. That looks stupid there. Let's drag it down here towards the bottom. There we go. We opened up an image into Photoshop, we made it black and white, and we added some text to it. Now what we need to do is to save this image. We're going to do that by going over here to File, and we're going to go to Save As. We'll wait briefly for that Save As dialog box to open up. And we're going to do two things here. Where it says Save As over at the top, that's just the name of the file. We'll just call this black and white Rowan. And then the other thing we're going to pay attention to is where it says format. Once again, if you're on Windows, yours will look slightly different, but will function the same way. Photoshop is the default document that Photoshop wants to save things in if you have a layered document that you're working in. Now, we have 3 layers right now. We have our type layer, we have our black and white adjustment layer, and we have our what was once our background layer, the picture of Rowan individually. And if we were going to work on this later, we would save it as a Photoshop file, aka a PSD or a .psd. But I know for a fact that I am done with this. I've done everything that I wanted to do to it, and I'm not going to go back to it. So instead, what I'm going to do is save it as a JPEG. JPEGs are a smaller file size than PSD, but they will be able to, they won't keep your layers, sadly. However, you will be able to display it on the internet or send it to somebody else who does not have Photoshop, and they will be able to see it just fine as well. So, you know, a little bit of pros and cons with both of those things there. PSD files, people that don't have Photoshop can't open it, but you do get your layers, and it is a larger file size, whereas JPEGs, smaller file size, don't get your layers, but more people can see it. So we've named our file, we changed our format to JPEG, and we're just going to save it right here into the same folder, and we will click Save. Now, once you click Save, you should get one more dialog box that will pop up, which is this one, your JPEG options. This is just how big of a file you want to create. Now, I currently want to have a fairly large file. If you click on Preview, it will tell you the size down here if you wait very briefly of the file that you're currently saving. This would be 10.1 megabytes. If that's too big for me, I can drag this down. The smaller this number, the smaller the file size should be over here. And we'll see what this one will be. Now it's at just 10, it's 5.1 megabytes. I normally like to leave mine at 12 unless I'm trying to meet the file size requirements for a specific website or email or something. And we'll just hit OK. And we've now saved that document completely. You can tell down here. Once that's all gone, that means we have completely saved this document. So we could close this out by hitting the X or hitting File Close over here. We'll just say don't save because we've already saved the completed version. And that's it. So here in this video, what we did is we opened Photoshop. In Photoshop, we opened an already existing image, made some very brief, easy changes to it, and then saved it as a JPEG. So that's just a little bit of importing and exporting in Adobe.